G20 members, including, of course, all G8 members, the EU members, the CIS members, all the countries who are directly involved in this particular energy situation in all this Euro-Atlantic, Eurasian space, I would say. This is going to be discussed with our partners. The immediate occasion would be May 22nd, when Russia-EU summit takes place at the city of Khabarovsk. And we discussed it also briefly with the European Union Troika at the foreign ministers level last week in Luxembourg. So I don't know how all of our partners would react. They recognize the importance of finding a way out of situations which we experienced once again last January. But we don't see anything else by way of new initiatives. We only keep hearing every year that we, Russia, must ratify the Treaty to the Energy Charter, and it's really not very intelligent way of proceed because we have repeatedly explained why we would not do this, and why this particular regime embodied in the Treaty to the Energy Charter is flawed. So the offer on the table is to address in a comprehensive way the energy security issues of the producers, consumers, and the transit countries, and not only as regards oil and gas, but basically all other sources of energy, including nuclear energy. We believe that given the failed experience of the past, including the experience of the commitments undertaken by our partners in relation to the signature of the Energy Charter Treaty, we must not take chances, and we must address the energy security in all its aspects, as actually was agreed by the G8 leaders when they assembled in St. Petersburg for the summit in 2006 and adopted a declaration laying down exactly those principles which you want now to codify.
Ariel Cohen, the Heritage Foundation. Mr. Minister, you mentioned the revision of the post-Bretton Woods economic arrangements. What exactly is the Russian view of the Russian plan for such a revision? Why the current system is not satisfactory? And when you're mentioning the regional reserve currency, are you envisaging a ruble as such a reserve currency, or are you envisaging something jointly with China, for example, and the ruble yuan joint currency? Because if it's without China, the size of the economy, even if it's the regional economy, including countries of the Commonwealth of Independent States, the size of that economy or the size of that monetary mass is going to be comparable with the Canadian dollar or Swiss franc. Thank you.
In the order you presented your, not a question, expose, I would say, what we mean under the reform of the international monetary system, the answer is very simple. You take the final document of the London summit and translate it into further details and implement it. Why the current system is not satisfactory? Well, I think the answer is obvious, because we don't want to experience this type of crisis next time. Whether ruble is meant by us when we speak about regional reserve currencies, the answer is yes. And I leave it to you to make comparisons between the Canadian dollars and the yuan. And there are various ways of promoting innovative schemes. For example, a small country like Belarus and a big country like China agreed to swap their currencies at a certain amount to service bilateral trade. This in itself is a stabilizer. The Turks proposed to us to do the same between their currency and the ruble. And of course, in the context of creating the customs union between Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan, in the context of relationship between Russia and Belarus, we not only speak more and more about using our currencies and using ruble as the reserve currencies, but we promote practical steps in this direction. So I think without stronger regional pillars of international monetary system, which would still be, headed by the IMF and the World Bank, it would be not very easy to avoid similar crises in the future. And the experience of euro, for example, the growing role of yuan, yen, and the projects being discussed in the context of ASEAN countries in Southeast Asia, of developing a common exchange currency. The projects of similar nature are, in very practical terms, considered in Latin America and in the Persian Gulf, by the way. So it's the trend which must be embraced and used not to juxtapose the IMF vis-à-vis everyone else, but to harmonize the role of the IMF and the inevitable process of multipolarity in the financial and economic area.
Here's a question in the back there. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes? Turn the other way.
Глубоко уважаемый Minister Lavrov, John Daly, Central Asia Caucasus Institute. You said that in issues of commonality that Afghanistan is becoming paramount. And obviously it is the shifting emphasis of the Obama administration to put more troops there, that a northern resupply corridor through Russia and adjoining nations takes on increased importance. Could you please elaborate on what levels of increased cooperation the Russian Federation is considering? Would it eventually, for example, go to the level of the types of supplies currently being transited through Pakistan to include armaments, or will it be only restricted to non-lethal materials? Большое спасибо.
Большое пожалуйста. The transit through Russia for the international ISAF, international anyway. Forgot how it's all the acronyms. They kill the transit through Russia has started long ago. It's only 1 year ago that we signed an agreement with NATO as an organization for non-lethal transit, but for many years lethal transit has been operating through Russia on the basis of our bilateral agreements with France, Germany, and recently the similar agreement with Spain was signed. They can move equipment, troops. When they move troops with sidearms only, they don't even need to land in Russia. When they move lethal equipment, they need to land for inspection. And this has been working very smoothly. And by those very agreements, it is provided for this transit, German, French, or Spanish transit, not to be limited to the national contingents, but to contingent of any other country participating in ISAF under the Security Council mandate. So, strictly speaking, any country participating in ISAF could use these transit facilities under the Russian-German, Russian-French agreements. But we are ready to do more by way of expanding the transit possibilities. And we discussed this with our American colleagues, and we can consider quite a number of other options. What would be important is not only to get agreement of Russia and other countries whom you must cross before you reach Afghanistan, but also to make sure that as far as railroad transit is concerned, for example, that the capacity of the infrastructure is really ready to swallow more as the needs